Welcome to everyone to session 3 of day 1 here at HR Exchange Live, Employee Engagement and Experience. This session is titled How to Build Trust on Remote Teams. And before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that should you encounter any technical issues, feel free to put a question. I can try to help you out, help you sort those out. Just put your questions in the Q&A box. That is the same Q&A box that you'll submit questions to our speaker. I encourage you to do that throughout the session, and I will facilitate the Q&A as the session reaches that point. Be sure to make the most of the resources on offer. I think we've got a link down there to a tech demo that we did recently with Tango Card, which if you haven't checked that out, be sure that you do. It's actually a really cool tool that can help with your rewards distribution. So with all that said, trust is obviously a big thing. And, you know, we've seen some organizations build it or put work into building it during the pandemic, while others have struggled to maintain it. And the remote aspect has certainly added some complexity to that. So to lead us in this discussion around how we can build and maintain that trust, we're joined by Rebecca Hathaway. She is the Director of Employee Experience at Tango Card. Welcome, Rebecca. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you all here. Very excited for this one. Again, my name is Rebecca Hathaway. I am the Director of Employee Experience at Tango Card. I've been there for a little over 4 years now. And yeah, we're going to talk about how we at Tango Card have worked to build the trust within our remote teams and the successes that we've seen there. And we're actually going to start off, our first thing is going to be a poll. How has your company created a work from home option for your employees? It's got a fun way to get us started here and see, you know, what everybody has done so far and what does that look like for you? We'll give everybody just a minute here. Somebody said there's distracting music in the background. I don't know.
That should no, that should fade away. It's the lobby music. It should go away, but if it doesn't, I would just recommend that someone refresh their screen.
Okay, perfect. I don't hear anything. All right, let's look at some poll results. So 84% of you guys have created a work from home option for employees. That's really fantastic. I think what we're going to talk about today is, you know, you've created this work from home option, and does it stay? Does it go? You know, what is the next step in a post-COVID world where it is safe to return, and what are we looking at here? We'll start off with an interesting statistic. So very recently, Tech Republic and a couple other companies did some surveys, and as high as 1 in 3 employees said they will quit their job and go somewhere else if remote work or work from home ends. That's a big number. That's a lot of folks to be willing to just get up and leave their roles. And there's probably a variety of reasons for that. We don't have that all in this survey, but thinking about it through that lens and how we approach the return to work when it is safe to do so, that says a lot. And we want to make sure that we're giving the employees what they need, and we're taking that into consideration. But how do we do it successfully, and what does it look like to live in that kind of space? And so we're going to talk about first a little bit what our company is doing, what Tango Card is doing, and kind of where we've seen success and what we can do in that space. So what we're doing, the first thing that we're doing is rolling out a choice first program. Our whole brand is built on choice and this idea that people are more engaged when you give them a choice. And that is the first step, I think, in building trust, is actually reaching out to the employees and saying, what do you want? because it's showing that you're not just listening to your executive team or your leadership or your board, but you're listening to all those people that make your company happen. Our Choice First program means that you get a primary desk, whether that's at home or in an office. That is your choice. And you can hybrid. You can do a flex schedule where you come in a couple days, you work from home a couple days. There are a couple very small exceptions to that rule. We have 2% of our employees do have to be in the office due to the nature of their roles. But the other 98% have gotten to make this choice. And what we've seen is that of our 185 employees, only about 30 have said, I want to be in the office on a regular basis. That's my primary workspace. People are very interested in that touchdown space, in that ability to come into the office periodically, see their coworkers, have an event, but not necessarily do the bulk of their work there. And I think that's a lot of what we're going to see in the future is this hybrid workspace. But that's how we are approaching our return to work, to kind of give our employees the opportunity of choice, to say, we trust you to make the choice that's right for you. So here are your options. And I think making sure, our policy even says that we trust you to make the choice that's right for you. We as an employer have to lead with that trust. We can't expect employees to give it to us if we don't first give it to them, which leads to our next poll question. Does your company currently use rewards and incentives for employee engagement programs? I feel like that one. Oh, there we go. There it is. I apologize. My slide was delayed. So looking at engagement and how you keep people engaged in a work from home space, does your current company do anything like that? Or have you used anything like that in the past? What are you doing in that space for engagement, especially in this remote world? Give everybody just a minute to answer that one. Looks like about 39% of our pollsters are not currently doing anything, or are currently doing something, and 61% are not. And that is not an unusual amount. Engagement programs are not as common, but we'd like to see them become more common. And I think one of the things that we're going to see here today and in the future is that as you're building trust with teams, tools for this kinds of things, some sort of rewards, incentive, engagement has to happen to build that trust. There's a lot of talk of, well, how do I manage my output? How do I do this? How do I do that if I'm fully remote? And the answer is technology. There are so many tools out there that do a variety of things that can help with that space. Some of the tools that we've used as our company and how we've used them, we use Namely as our HRIS, and we as a company have actually taken our tooling, which is digital rewards and incentives, and we have integrated it into some of these tools. So Namely, and I'm sure several other HRIS have a news feed now. So it's very similar to when you log into social media, there's a feed that people can see. And if they see engagement in that feed, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be in there. Our particular product, we've actually linked it so that people can send gift cards to employees as a thank you internally in our Namely system. So you can see what's happening, and you can see what's happening across teams. And that kind of public space really shows what we're doing, and it shows people that it's okay to engage with other teams. We started doing a Slack integration with our product, our reward link integration. And what that does is it allows people to go into Slack. There's a Slack bot where you start typing, oh, you want to, do some sort of incentive or a gift for somebody because they went above and beyond and you want to send them a public thank you. And once we did our Slack integration with that, we see about 125 kudos a month. We're a 187 person company. So 125 people a month are sending thank yous that are public and visible to people across the organization, not just in their own teams, not just in their own silo, but across the company. And when people see that, we're seeing more and more engagement. And when we put it in Slack, we saw an increase. And this is our own integration. But before that, we were using a tool called Tiny Pulse, which is also a really great engagement tool. It is a tool that does surveys. They also use a kudos function. I believe they call it peer-to-peer thank yous. I don't remember what they call it. I apologize. But that was a great opportunity as well. We used them for a while, but we did see our numbers increase when we put things in Slack. So using Slack, using Teams, using whatever chat function that you have as a company is a really great way to get those people engaged, get people talking, and creating Slack channels that are public and fun. Not everything needs to be work-related conversation. That is a huge point there, is to say, oh my gosh, there's a way where I can just sit here and watch Slack and have it just be really excited kudos and thank yous and gifts of dancing pandas as a result of that. And it keeps people looking forward to something in their day. The final one that I want to talk about as far as engagement apps, and this is something that we've used for about a year now, is an app called Donut. I believe it's Slack only at this time, but it does two things. The first thing it does is create a Slack water cooler topic 3 times a week. And it's a random question, right? It's one of those wonderful icebreaker questions that either goes really well and people are very excited, or sometimes every now and then there's crickets. You know, realistically, not everybody wants to answer every question, but it does open up conversation that you would normally see in a random setting. Or it gives people the opportunity to express themselves and to have a dialogue with people that they don't always talk to. And that's a key part when we talk about remote engagement, is giving people the opportunity to connect in a way that they normally wouldn't, or with teams that they normally wouldn't. I'm going to use my dog behind me as an example. Very recently, she's in a hot dog bed. And one of the always interesting questions is a hot dog a sandwich? It's not a poll question. You don't have to answer. But the dialogue that it created in Slack really just kept going, and it went all day. There was an all-day conversation about this across the entire company, and it was wonderful because people connected in a way that they normally wouldn't. And you can do it at your leisure because it's Slack. The second thing that this app does is it randomly assigns you with a person. Every 2 weeks, you get randomly assigned a person in the company, and it says, all right, you're going to have a coffee date with this person. And we have seen a huge uptick in that. It's been a really cool thing to see, because what it's doing is taking that 15-minute conversation that you would have with a random person at, you know, in the break room when you're getting your coffee, and turning it into a meeting to get to know someone. And these are not intended to be work-related discussions. It's really just intended to connect with people across the organization. And it links to your calendar, so it's really easy, and it takes the awkwardness out. So a new hire is going to be randomly matched with somebody, and they're not going to have to do any work. They're not going to have to reach out and say, hey, I don't know you, but I thought it'd be fun to get to know someone. It takes the responsibility off them. And I have some donut stats pulled up from our company. You can see them here. And one of the things that we've noticed is, of our 187 person company, there are roughly 34 donut meetings every single month. And so if you look at it from a perspective of that's 2 people, we're looking at close to 80 people are engaged with this tool every single month, meeting people that they wouldn't otherwise meet with. And when we talk about renewing things as a company or what we want to keep doing, one of the resounding things I've heard was, don't take donut away. It's too much fun. I've heard that so many times. And so it's a really great way to keep things fun. There's a couple questions. What app is this? It's called Donut for Slack, like coffee donuts. It's, like I said, it's a really great tool. It's not super expensive. And it's a great way to just keep people talking and keep people meeting in a space where not everybody's going to see everybody. It's also great, even if you're not fully remote, if you have multiple offices. We have 3 offices in addition to being fully remote, offices in Seattle, Boise, and Omaha. And so it allows people from those offices to meet each other as well. So it's not just a remote tool. It can be really helpful if you have a lot of geographically diverse folks. And yes, that is a hot dog pillow on my couch. Donut is actually an opt-in. You can opt out at any time and then opt back in as you feel like it. We always opt in our new hires and let them know that they can opt out. And you can opt out if you're especially busy or things are just going crazy in your life. You don't have time for that right now, but you want to come back to it. It's fully voluntary. I think you can make it mandatory within the app. I do think that's a setting, though I don't recommend it. To keep people engaged, you want to give them that opportunity to say, I want this. I want to do this. And I will also say our executive suite is also in there. So you can randomly get assigned with like coffee with the CEO, which is really, our CEO very much enjoys that. He thinks it's just the best. So those are tools where you can kind of have that peer-to-peer engagement. But I know a lot of the biggest concern about building trust is building trust with managers and their employees and making sure that your employees are engaged in more than a fun way, right? We want to make sure that people are still doing their jobs, getting things done. And a lot of folks are very nervous about this piece of, well, if I can't see my folks, I don't know what they're doing, which is not always the best way to go about that. And we have all these tools for remote engagement, but what do we do as managers? So we've done all this work to build trust, to build this peer-to-peer relationship. How do you build trust with your employee as a manager, as a leader, as a supervisor? And we've come up with some best practices to ensure that folks are doing their best work. They're bringing their best selves to the table without having to see them, without having to say like, oh, I see you at your desk, so you must be working, which we all know is not true. You don't have to work when you're at your desk. We've all seen it. We've all walked past that person who's on, BuzzFeed, just reading lists all day. It happens. So one of the things that we have started doing is using the OKR model, objectives and key results. Now, this is not prescriptive. This is just what we do as a company and to give some creative ideas for how to engage folks. We use an OKR model so that people have objective results. They have key results that lead to a company initiative. So if you're doing meaningful work that leads to what the company is doing, that can be really meaningful for folks. And having a situation where you've created metrics that are measurable. If you don't have metrics for your team, that's probably a concern. If you don't have goals, what's happening there? But by creating goals, by working with team members to create those pieces, what you're able to do is measure their output. You don't need to measure the human. You can say, I'll use my recruiters as an example because it's a nice, easy one. If they make 4 hires in a week, I know they were working. I don't need to see them to know that 4 hires is a big deal. And so creating some sort of weekly, okay, well, what did you do this week? What have you been doing, as opposed to how long did you work? And that is a big piece, again, that's coming in this remote space. I also really advocate for regularly scheduled one-on-ones that are never canceled. I meet with every one of my team members for at least 30 minutes a week, and I never cancel a one-on-one unless there's somebody out of office. It's always rescheduled, even if there's no talking points in that one-on-one. Even if I don't have an agenda, I have a one-on-one with my team because something inevitably comes up and it allows me to stay connected. And I think a lot of managers are quick to cancel a one-on-one. It's the first thing that gets canceled when you have a busy week, and it's the last thing that you should cancel. We use a tool called 15.5, and I apologize, it's not in this slide deck, but it does track one-on-ones with your manager, and you can add talking points to them so that you as a manager can see what your employee wants to talk to you about before, so you can be ready. And also kind of allows that opportunity to say, oh, well, I wanted to cancel the one-on-one, but I see that my employee has already put something in there. You can't cancel that. You gotta, if you need to move it, great. But really fostering that trust in the back and forth to say your employees can also use that tool to put in their feedback to their talking points in the one-on-one. It doesn't have to be manager-led. A big thing that we also do at our company, and this is something that is, I think, specific and unique to Tango Card, but I would encourage you to think about it as an opportunity, is we have spot bonus pools for every single team. Every single team is given a chunk of money at the beginning of the year to reward like in-time spot bonuses, which is a really great tool to say, oh man, I saw what you did on this project just because I didn't physically see you in the office. Here is a $50 gift card, happens in real time, uses our internal product, and is a really great way to show that real-time feedback and, again, continue to build trust and rapport with an employee. And all of this comes down to this one point at the end, which is don't try to track a person. Try to track their output, their work, what they're doing. We hear a lot about this recently is, again, how do you track humans? How do you make sure your people are being productive? And the answer there shouldn't be, well, turn on their camera every 5 minutes and see if they're working. It should be, okay, look at what you're expecting them to do and measure that output. Find a way to engage with them so you can see their output and not just see the presenteeism, which is, I think, going to be the leading change in how we work remotely and how we build that trust, and what we can do in that space. And I think that is kind of the last point in this discussion. I know we have a lot of questions and I want to get to those.
All right. Excellent.
All right. Let's answer some questions.
All right, cool. Thank you for that, Rebecca.
Yeah.
So first question that I see here, it says, are those apps, do they work on in a 24/7 work environment? So, where employees are working different shifts. So for example, with Donut, how would it randomly assign someone to have coffee with when their schedules are different?
If you're on a totally different shift, I don't think that would likely work. Like if you leave at 3 p.m. and somebody else starts their shift at 3 p.m., there's likely very little overlap there. But I will say it would work with the water cooler app, because that's just a question that's posed at the beginning of the day, and you could log in for your shift and see that and chime in and have that conversation piece. But again, I don't know that the 30-minute meeting would necessarily work if your shifts truly don't overlap in some way, because it does look at your calendar to see what your schedule looks like. And so that is a piece of that puzzle.
If people are going to, an all remote team, but they still want to get together in person, how often would you kind of recommend your remote company or team get together for those in-person meetings?
I would say what we've seen great success with is a monthly cadence, especially for teams. We as a company have a monthly all hands, which has been really helpful. If you don't have a monthly all hands, what we've seen really successfully, and I think there's a SHRM article on this, is quarterly company events. So like a Q1 event, a Q2 event for the company, and then having those kind of smaller team or division opportunities to meet once a month.
Okay. Someone asked, just curious how you set your budget for how much money to give teams for the spot bonus pools.
Yeah, so ours is set on a percentage of average pay for the employee population as a whole. And then that is multiplied by the number of people in an org projected for the total year. So let's say you have a 40-person org, they're projected to be 50, and the budget is $200 per person. You get $200 per person based on the end of the year projection, not the current role. So it is nuanced and it is particular to us. But again, we've seen a huge uptick in trust with that, with building able to say, hey, thank you for staying late on this project. Here's a $50 bonus as a result, just to say thank you. But you can do it however you want. That's the beauty of that kind of tool is you can say, well, every team gets $100 per person or $50 per person. You could do it per salary. You could do it per head. We do it, again, as a percentage of the average employee's salary.
Okay. Now, one of the questions we got was, what would you suggest for managers who are old school, where they track a person's performance based on attendance versus work/output?
That's a hard challenge because then you're fighting. I don't want to say fighting, but then you're pushing for something that is really probably out of that person's comfort zone. And I would challenge them to say, when you look at somebody, how do you know that they're working just because they're sitting at their desk? And how do you know why you're paying them? If you're not seeing an output from them, why does it matter if they're sitting there? I could sit there and look at a blank Excel spreadsheet all day. There's also keyboard shortcuts that can hide your screen. And I don't know if old school managers realize that. I've encountered that a lot. There's keyboard shortcuts where you could just pull up anything. And, saying that we're moving forward in the world with these technologies. And if you're just looking at somebody to see if they're sitting there, you're not going to see the output that they're bringing. But that's a longer discussion that I don't know if we have the capacity to get into today. But challenging them to say, like, know the output of your team, have some basic metrics that you can look at. And if people are meeting them, then they're doing their work.
Absolutely. So how do you encourage engagement / utilization of those digital apps amongst employees when they're all loaded with other similar communication platforms?
Yeah. So our primary platform is Slack. So we do see a lot of traffic there. And I think the encouragement comes from the lightheartedness of some of the engagement, right? Like if I pull up Donut, it's a very light, easy, fun question usually. And when you've had a rough day or you've had like 3 hours of meetings, it's really nice to have the hot dog sandwich debate, right? It's a fun distraction. And so making sure that you have space where it doesn't have to be about work, just for a few minutes keeps people really engaged with that tool. Because we're all working more, we're working a lot, and having that little space in the day to answer a funny question or read everybody's response that's not related to what you're doing. It's not related to your work. And giving them that space, I think, has been a really encouraging way to see the use of that tool because it's so focused on being not work related.
All right. This next one is, what happens when you don't have budget or money to provide rewards?
Yeah. And that's a huge thing. Not everybody does. And that's where you need to get a little bit creative. Maybe you can I've seen companies do like a PTO day or, PTO hours, something like that. Or some sort of public acknowledgement. I think we underestimate the amount of people who really see engagement as a result of public acknowledgement of doing something well. You don't have to have money to say thank you. And I think that is something that we don't see enough of. And, if I pull up we call it TC Kudos Slack channel, even if there wasn't money attached to it, you'd see 125 little blurbs about how much people are doing for others and encouraging a company of gratitude and an attitude towards saying thank you and acknowledging. And that doesn't require a budget.
Absolutely. Well, no one's asked this, but I've got to know, was there a kind of a unanimous verdict on whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich?
There was not. There was no answer to that question. It
seems like it would be a contentious, yeah.
It was it was an all-day debate. My dog thinks the hot dog is not a sandwich. We're going to go with that.
All right.
And I thank you guys all so much for attending. I know we're at time. We'll be sure to send out all of the apps that we mentioned here today. because I know that was a lot of questions. We talked about several, so I'll make sure to, we'll get that information out to you guys as well. Thank you all again so much. David, is there anything else? Like I said, I know we're at time. I want to be respectful of everybody's schedule.
No, yeah, we are at time. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for joining us today. And everybody, if you could, be sure that you click on over to the next session, either through the agenda widget or through your email, and I will see you over there.
All right. Thank you.